Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we're going to focus on the Egyptian foreign policy, and more specifically on the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi over the past decade, and looking towards the future as well, as we did see over the past week a couple of important visits made by His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi to Turkey, and his meeting with the Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan on several important issues like the Palestinian cause, for example, the situation in Libya and Syria, and of course the political and the economic coordination and cooperation between Egypt and Turkey in the future. Also in the past week, you did see the visit made by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouri to China and his meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping upon participating in the China Economic Forum on the China-African relations and the China-Africa cooperation over the past week, and shedding more light on the participation of Egypt in this forum and the bilateral cooperation between Egypt and China and Egypt and Africa in general. All this and more, of course, is to be discussed during the course of the episode for tonight. But we will be starting straight away with the main top stories for today that took place on Sunday, as President Abdel al-Sisi urged the provision of the needed facilities and the incentives to increase the investment rates, encourage the Egyptian and foreign private sectors, and to build on the recent successes in enhancing the direct foreign investments. In a meeting with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouri and the Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade, Hassan Al-Khatib, the President also demanded the expansion of the Golden License Initiative for the investors in the priority sectors of the Egyptian economy, such as the industry, green energy, transportation, telecom, agriculture and healthcare. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said that the meeting reviewed the strategy for enhancing the investment and trade within Egypt 2030 vision. The strategy aims at achieving the tangible and the expanded progress in the investment and the exports, notably in the industrial sector, which is the main driver for the economic growth. President Abdel al-Sisi stressed the depth of the bilateral relations between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, highlighting the pivotal role of both countries in achieving stability in the region within the current challenges. This came as President al-Sisi received the Saudi Interior Minister Abdel Aziz bin Saud bin Naif and the Saudi State Minister and member of the Saudi Cabinet, Dr. Assam bin Saeed. The presidential spokesperson said that the Saudi Interior Minister conveyed the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince greetings to President al-Sisi, who also expressed greetings to the Saudi King and the Crown Prince. The meeting tackled the importance of the expanding joint cooperation and the coordination between Egypt and Saudi Arabia to face the security challenges, including cross-border organized crime and the electronic crimes. Both sides agreed that such crimes are witnessing new and variant patterns that require joint coordination and cooperation. And for the third top story for today, President Abdel al-Sisi congratulated the Egyptian Paralympic champions participating in the Paris Paralympic Games 2024 as they secured 7 medals during the international event. President al-Sisi said on his social media account, "I congratulate the Egyptian champions in Paris Paralympic Games 2024 as they raised the Egyptian name high during the Paralympics." He listed the names of the champions: Mohamed El-Minyawi with a gold medal in weightlifting, Rehab Radwan a gold in powerlifting, Mohamed Sobhi a silver medal in the same event, Fatma Mahrous a silver medal in weightlifting, Safa Hassan a bronze medal in powerlifting, and Nadia Hassan a bronze medal in the same field. And the Paralympic team for volleyball that won a bronze medal. President Sisi added in his remarks to the winners, "Your successes represent a ray of light to Egypt and prove that the Egyptians are always capable of challenging and overcoming the obstacles. Your strong will is considered a source of pride to all the youth of our dear homeland." We will be heading to the first report of the daily debate for tonight, focusing on the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi over the past week. In the upcoming reports, so stay tuned.
President Abdel al-Sisi reviews the main aspects of the National Project for Human Development, a new beginning for building the human, and directs the completion of the formulation of the project's implementation plans. President Abdel al-Sisi receives a phone call from His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They discuss regional issues and ways to strengthen joint Arab efforts. President Abdel al-Sisi follows up on the government's action plan to ensure the sustainability and stability of electricity supply. President Abdel al-Sisi inaugurates the 2024 Egypt International Exhibition for Aviation and Space in New Alamein City. President Abdel al-Sisi arrives in Ankara for an official visit to the Republic of Turkey in response to the invitation from President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. President Abdel al-Sisi delivers a speech during the joint press conference with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey. President Abdel al-Sisi extends his sincere condolences and sympathy to the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz, King of Saudi Arabia, and to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, and to the brotherly people of Saudi Arabia on the passing of the late Princess Latifa bint Abdulaziz Al Saud.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and we will be heading to a very special report regarding the visit of His Excellency President Abdel al-Sisi to Turkey in the past week, and meeting with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan on several issues, including the Palestinian cause and the developments in the Gaza Strip, as well as the situation in Libya, Sudan and Syria, as well as the coordination and the political continuation of developing the bilateral relations between Egypt and Turkey in the field of politics and the economy as well. All this and more in the upcoming report, so stay tuned. And after that, we will be joined with Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the member of the Egyptian Foreign Council for Foreign Affairs, so stay tuned.
President Abdel al-Sisi reaffirmed Egypt's goal to maintain the current calm in the Eastern Mediterranean and resolve disagreements between the riparian countries in the region for the benefit of its peoples. This came during President al-Sisi's remarks at the joint press conference with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara last week. During the press conference, President al-Sisi affirmed his aspiration for further regional cooperation to leverage the region's natural resources for the prosperity of all its people. President al-Sisi said he was delighted to undertake his first visit to Turkey, stressing that the visit constitutes the beginning of a new chapter of cooperation between both countries. He noted that cooperation between the Egyptian and Turkish peoples has progressed over the past years, especially in tourism, trade and investment. The President also emphasized that the discussions tackled the importance of facilitating intra-trade and expanding the scope of free trade agreement between Egypt and Turkey to increase trade to $15 billion in the coming years. The Turkish president in turn described his visit to Cairo last February as a new turning point for the relations between both countries. He also encouraged Turkish businessmen to operate in Egypt and extended a warm invitation for Egyptian businessmen to conduct business in Turkey. During the presser, President Sisi said he agreed with his Turkish counterpart on the importance of close coordination between Egypt and Turkey to find political solutions to several regional crises. In his remarks, Sisi deplored the unprecedented tragedy that has befallen the Palestinian people for nearly a year. In addition, he called for launching a process that would fulfill the aspirations of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state based on the 4th of June 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, per the relevant international resolutions. Sisi noted that both countries have cooperated since the beginning of the crisis to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza, despite the continuing obstacles imposed by Israel. For his part, the Turkish president said that he and President Sisi have agreed to hold consultations regularly to resolve regional issues, especially the conflict in Gaza. He noted the situation in Palestine was at the center of their meeting in Ankara. Beyond Gaza war, Sisi and Erdogan also exchanged views on the crisis in Libya, where they agreed to work towards achieving security and political stability there. President Sisi said that we reiterated the need to close the chapter on this protracted crisis by holding simultaneous presidential and legislative elections, withdrawing illegitimate foreign forces and mercenaries from the country, and ending the phenomenon of armed militias, thus enabling Libya to overcome division and achieve lasting security and stability. Regarding the situation in Syria, the two leaders emphasized their commitment to solving a crisis that has gravely affected the Syrian people. In addition, the two leaders addressed the Sudanese crisis and Egyptian efforts to reach a ceasefire and promote a political solution. They also discussed the situation in the Horn of Africa, notably Somalia, and affirmed the need to preserve Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity amid threats. According to President Erdogan, Egypt and Turkey agree on several regional issues, and their contributions to regional peace and stability are vital. Before the press conference, the two leaders witnessed the signing of several memoranda of understanding and agreements between Egypt and Turkey in industry, urban planning, competitive policy, higher education, railways, civil aviation, information and communication technology. The agreements also covered areas of health and medical sciences, project development, capacity building, finance and economy. They also covered other areas such as energy, labor and employment, environmental protection and agriculture. Both leaders also chaired the first high-level Strategic Cooperation Council meeting to advance trade, investment, tourism, transportation and agriculture between Egypt and Turkey. According to the Central Bank of Egypt, trade between Egypt and Turkey has significantly increased over the past 2 years, following the end of a decade of strained relations, recording nearly $2 billion in the first half of 2024.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me today in the studio is Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
It's always a pleasure to have me.
Pleasure is all mine. Of course, we did speak during the past week more about the Egyptian-Turkish relations, and we did see the visit for the first time made by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Turkey, and the meeting between President al-Sisi and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan. How did you see the whole visit?
Right, it seems to be quite, very much exceptional and a historical one indeed, insofar as it is to be inaugurated as the first state visit on the part of His Own Excellency, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, to Ankara. But it was not all of a sudden to be initiated, actually. I mean, a large number of preparations that did occur before that sort of meeting that did occur during the course of the last week. Perhaps the first during the World Championship, I mean, the World Cup that did occur in Doha. There was some slight understanding and a little talk actually between past presidents actually on the margin of the football race championship, I mean, tackling about the bilateral relations and some consequences and some situations in the Middle East, particularly the Palestinian cause. Then it was to be followed actually by the first state visit on the part of Mr. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, actually during last February to Al-Tahadiyya Palace at Cairo, at an invitation on the part of His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, also to tackle a large number of issues of mutual concern and of deep interest on both sides actually. After that there was an invitation on the part of Mr. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to His Own Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, actually that is to be arriving in Cairo. But before this and that, there were to be, some signs of mutual understanding to be detected between both sides on a humanitarian level, particularly during the course of the last year when the devastating earthquake did occur in Turkey. The first, initiative was on the part of the Egyptian presidential estate. Egypt was the first country actually to stretch a hand of help, or a helping hand actually, with humanitarian aid and medical aid, sending physicians, doctors, surgeons, food, beverage and that sort of thing. Actually, it was quite astonishing and very much amazing to Mr. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, after long years of breach and of dispute between both parties, I would say, of mutual, I mean, I wouldn't say hatred, but, I mean, stoppage in consulatic ties and of, I mean, diplomatic relations. So it was not all of a sudden, it was a sign of goodwill, it was a sign of a high sense of generosity as much as a great sense of extreme sense of kindness on the part of, the presidential authority actually. That's why it was to be crowned with his own visit to Ankara during the course of the last week, at an invitation on his own part, Mr. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to discuss and to examine a large number of issues, on top of which perhaps the Palestinian cause that would seem to be quite of prime concern, and a large number of other issues such as the status in Sudan, the case in the African Horn, as much as the case in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, problematic situation concerning Cyprus, Greece, and the existence of Turkey, and the extreme sense of enmity and hatred between both parties. I would say that is the Cypriot side and the Greek, as much as the Turkish on the other. And there were other, I mean, agendas to be discussed and topics to be examined to a greater extent for mutual concern. Well, I would say it seems to be quite a very much a strategic sort of visit, because it initiates the first initial invitation on the part of Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan to Mr. President, His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, actually to arrive in Ankara. This is for one instance. At another, actually, for the fact that both countries have got their own sense of weight and extreme sense of practicing power, both of each in its own turn. I mean, the Egyptian presidential authority, as it was to be widely propagated actually for almost all the Arab countries and the Mediterranean countries, as well as much as the Western world, is quite well known with its own intermediating aspects and initiation of peace in the Middle East, particularly in the Mediterranean area, as much as its own power that is to be exercised on the African countries, as much as on the Mediterranean states in the meantime. And much the same way that Turkey in its own turn would seem to be also practicing a sense of power on the Islamic organization that would include a large number of Islamic countries, as much as, I mean, Western world, because being part of, one of those highly unified entities actually that would have its own say on what is happening in the Middle East, particularly also its own power that is to be exercised on what you might call, Islamic countries of non-Arab origin.
Yes.
And in the meantime, all these entities and all these practicing sense of power and mutual identification between parties would seem to be quite utilized in the right sense, or in the right direction, actually, to be initiated towards the one fundamental goal and the gospel that is to be practiced and aimed at right from the early start on the part of the Egyptian presidency. So a large number of very much successful issues and topics that were to be examined and discussed, and much the same way that the case of the African Horn, particularly Somalia, Sudan,
yes,
of the Mediterranean country, of the Mediterranean Sea, of the Red Sea, as much as the Libyan case, in addition to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, as much as on top of them all, as I've just said at the very beginning of the episode, the Palestinian cause. Yeah.
Doctor, you mentioned the topics that were discussed, and we did see some statements made by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah during the visit. How do you see the importance of boosting relations between Egypt and Turkey in order to be solving the crises in Palestine, the Gaza Strip nowadays? You've mentioned Sudan, Libya, the Horn of Africa in Somalia. How do you think the development of movement should be going through Egypt and Turkey to be solving these crises and de-escalating the situations, more specifically in Palestine and in Gaza now?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, to begin with, a large number of mutual identification signs and sense of similarity and consensus of opinions actually would appear from the presidential talk between both parties, I would say, in much the same way that they would seem to be agreeing on one main fundamental issue and one main problematic situation, which is the two-state solution. Apart from the disputes and divisions and the sense of the splits and the differentiation in the political opinions and in the orientation of both countries, the fact remains at the end of the day that they would seem to be quite very much unified at achieving one fundamental essential goal at the end of the day, which is the stoppage of the crusades on the part of the Israeli troops and the sabotage as much as the acts of demolition. And they would seem to be agreeing on one main fundamental topic, which is the establishment of the Palestinian state as being headed by Jerusalem, actually.
Yes.
In much the same way that, they would insist, both of them, in each his turn on the withdrawal of the Israeli troops from Rafah crossings, from Karm Abu Salim crossings, as much as the Philadelphia area, actually, that is to be disputed nowadays, actually, until the very moment of speaking. But in the meantime, what seems to be quite looming large as signs of identification and similarity in political opinions between both parties is the fact that, they would insist at the end of the day on the liberation of the Palestinians, actually. Their own rejection and denial of any advances on the part of the Jewish troops, as much as stopping almost all this warfare and reaching to a ceasefire, permanent one indeed, in terms of, the exchange of the hostages and the captivated figures of both sides. This is one of the main fundamental issues on top of the agendas and on top of the subjects that will be discussed during the course of the last summit. Signs of goodwill on both sides actually would insist on the fact that and would insinuate the importance of the liberation of the Palestinian people and the return of the refugees actually to their own homelands. It's by no means actually that the atrocities and the scandalous affairs of the Jewish troops that should be ended at the end of the day in the benefit of almost all concerned. This is as far as the Palestinian cause is very much concerned with.
Yes.
There are also other agendas and topics that are to be discussed, such as, for example, the Libyan case, the sort of the long-tribulated one indeed, and the long-devastated sort of issue actually, and because of the tribal disputes among the people living in there, because of the colonial imperialistic outlook of the Western world, because of the exploitation of the Libyan oil in the meantime, and the sort of the splits that did occur among almost all, the major figures within Libya, actually, such as Khalifa bin Qasim Haftar on the one hand, Aqila Saleh on the other, at times Khalid al-Mishri, actually, that seems to be quite, practicing extreme sense of power on the Libyan people in there. And in the meantime, I would really think that after a long series of heartbreaking adventures, and far from being successful summits, that's Berlin, Al-Khairat, and Palermo, the Cairo summit, all these would reach to no avail at the end of the day. Because of one major fundamental fact is the internal dispute and the internal threat and the militias that are very much practicing a great deal of conspiracies among the Libyan people. Acts of sabotage, acts of demolition as well, in the act of assassinating a large number of Libyan, of Egyptian, of even foreigners in the Libyan territory would occur. And I think that, the Turkish side is also practicing an extreme sense of power on Libya. I still remember about 4 years ago when, the turmoil was at its own height, when His Excellency, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, did say that, certain Al-Jafra is commonly regarded as a red zone. Only the stoppage of the Turkish advantage, actually would stand side by side on the borderlines of Tripoli.
Yes.
And as such, that will give us a clear indication of how powerful the existence and the, the internal intentions and the agendas actually on the Turkish side would seem pretty practiced against Libya. That's why when they would sit and talk and would reach to a consensus of opinion about the sort of the map of the road that should be taken, that channel that should be directed, and the sort of the decision that should be taken at the end of the day on both parties, that is the Egyptian side as much as the Turkish, concerning Libya, I would really say that 50% of the whole problem would be solved. And other 50, would be at the hands of the militias, of the indigenous citizens, as much as of selecting a president, as much as a sort of a parliament, among the Libyan indigenous citizens, actually.
Yes, Doctor, my last question regarding this important visit. It is a new chapter in terms of relations between Egypt and Turkey. But how do you see the importance of boosting the bilateral ties in trade, investment, and tourism?
Well, what seems to be quite from, the last 3 or 4 days from the topics that were to be examined and the passages that would be translated straightforwardly and directly between both presidents, I would really say that the sort of the relation between two countries wouldn't be very much restricted to what you might call bilateral ties, because yes, bilateral ties would seem to be among both parties or both countries that are just exchanging trade, this for that, merchandise items as much as trade and commercial aspects. But when it reached to regional mutual identification and the strategic partnership, that would give us a clear indication of how deep and the strengths of the sort of the relation between the two countries are. And part and parcel of the strategic partnership and the sort of the strategic, regional relation is the sort of exchanging two-way trade, as much as the establishment of factories for cloths, for medical aids, for engineering aspects, as much as exchanging what you might call the free trade between the two countries. And even during the period of disputes and the split that did occur between two parties for quite some time, even the commercial aspects were to be exchanged, and the consulatic ties, despite the fact that it would seem to be quite stopped. But, the Egyptian market was very much full of Turkish items, actually, being, displayed and being bought and sold, actually, with a great deal of success. A clear indication to the fact that both countries and both of the parties are very much in dire need for each other. That's sort of the thing that is being practiced, and the sort of the thing that would seem to be reached to from the confirmation of very much solid bilateral ties in the first instance that would reach to a strategic partnership and regional relations in the meantime between Turkish side on the one hand and the Egyptian state on the other.
Yes, Doctor, allow me to be going to the other report of the daily debate for tonight, focusing on another topic and another visit made by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli in the past week to China to be participating in the forum on China-Africa cooperation. This forum, an important forum to be tackling the importance of boosting bilateral ties between Egypt and China and Africa and China in general. We'll be having more details regarding such an important visit in the upcoming reports. So stay tuned.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended last Thursday the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation on behalf of President Fattah al-Sisi, during which he met With Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing, the Prime Minister has highlighted the pivotal role of the Forum on China-Africa cooperation in strengthening Sino-African relations. Madbouli emphasized the Forum's ability to drive cooperation between Africa and China, especially as the world faces new challenges. Madbouli said the Forum is not just an economic platform, but a forum for collective dialogue between Africa and China. He noted that since its inception in 2000, the Forum has significantly enhanced bilateral relationship. Looking ahead to the upcoming 2024 summit, Madbouli expressed optimism about the future of Sino-African cooperation. He emphasized that the vast potential for collaboration, particularly in addressing Africa's current challenges, offers promising prospects for the two sides. Madbouli said that Egypt has been a staunch supporter of the Forum and the Belt and Road Initiative. He pointed to the successful implementation of various joint projects such as China-Egypt Suez Economic and Trade Cooperation Zone and the Central Business District in Egypt's new administrative capital. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli held a series of meetings with Chinese corporation executives and businessmen to discuss investment opportunities in Egypt in various fields. Madbouli also met with Dai John, chairman of FAMSUN AgriFam, where they discussed the company's major projects in Egypt, particularly its involvement in food silo manufacturing and its partnership with Mustaqbal Misr to establish silos with a storage capacity of 500,000 tons in New Delta project. The Prime Minister also highlighted the significance of Egypt's accession to the BRICS group, stating that it opens up new opportunities for cooperation among member states. On the issue of regional stability, Madbouli emphasized alignment of Egypt and China's perspectives on the importance of maintaining peace and security in the Middle East. He affirmed Egypt's commitment to supporting the Palestinian cause.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight. We were speaking during the first part of the program on the visit made by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Turkey, and for the other part of the Daily Debate for tonight, we'll be shedding more light on the visit made by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli to China and meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping as well during participating in the China or the Forum on China-Africa cooperation. How do you see the importance of Egypt participating in this forum, and of course Prime Minister Madbouli participating on behalf of President al-Sisi?
True. Well, I mean, the sort of progress, the Egyptian state did achieve during the course of the last tenure of His Own Excellency, Mr. President Abdel al-Sisi, didn't, it's not very much restricted to the presidential level, but actually to the ministerial level in the meantime. As you might have said rightly now, that Dr. Mustafa Madbouli was very much, in the habit during the course of the last year of visiting not only China to attend a sort of forum, but actually he did visit Jordan, did meet at one time King Abdullah,
yes.
And in the meantime King of Bahrain, in the meantime Mohamed, and did, at a ministerial level visit a large number of Arab countries, and the last of which during the course of the last week was to be consummated with the great deal of success that he did achieve actually on a ministerial level, with meeting Xi Jinping, the Chinese president in the African Chinese Forum, discussing and tackling a large number of very much strategic important facts about both countries, not only about Egypt on the one hand and China on the other, but about the African continent in the meantime. Considering the fact that, how important the consideration of the existence of, on top of the agenda, on top of almost all the examinations of almost all the situations in the Middle Egypt is, stemming from the fact that any single individual sort of country that would like to get into the heart of Africa wouldn't have been given the sort of chance to get in or to be within had it not been for, I mean, the admittance and the admitting fact on the part of the Egyptian presidential authority. So it seems to be quite the gate as much as the key to get into the heart of Africa. One of the major fundamental dreams, let me say, so to speak, of China to be part of the African confederation, to be practicing again and to be revitalizing as much as rehabilitating the old road of the Silk and the Road, as much as, I mean, the initiation of the Belt and the Road. All these, tackling situations and all these initiations on the part of, Chen Bing, actually, the Chinese president, came to be considered, discussed and examined with Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, I mean, reaching to a great deal of success when they would touch on and upon, exchanging trade between both countries, enhancing, in the meantime, the industrial zone of the Suez Canal, as much as tackling in the meantime the problematic situations of the high taxes actually between the two countries when they would exchange these and that sort of merchandise items. But to a greater extent, it seems to be quite looming large, a great deal of success on the part of that sort of forum, because at the end of the session, actually, you can really find that a large number of memorandum of understanding that are to be signed between both parties, actually, and in the meantime, giving vast prospects and very much great opportunities, actually, of the Chinese existence into the heart of Africa, the sort of the thing that they dreamed of actually for quite a long period of time. In addition to this sort of fact, you can really find that China would keep an eye on not only Egypt, as I just said, that the sole responsible agent in the Middle East, and perhaps in the world, that seems to be quite very much responsible for the Palestinian cause. But in the meantime, from that sort of consulatic and very much high delegate profile visit, actually, in the part of both parties, we can really find at the end of the day that China is very much endorsing the suit of the Palestinian, of course, as much as the liberation of almost all the Palestinians and the stoppage of the suit of the aggressive war and the sense of aggression that's to be practiced on the part of the Israeli, Jewish troop, I would say. And this is another clear testimony to the sort of the success of the, the ministerial diplomacy, actually, playing a very active role of enhancing, of publicizing, of representing the atrocities of the Jewish troop and the sort of the serenity and the peacefulness, as much as the sort of spontaneity of expression, the clarity of the sort of the vision of almost of all the Palestinians, of how weak they would seem to be, of how they seem to be quite very much for fighting for their own existence. It's a sort of a fight for existence or a fight for life. It's a sort of the sort of the case that they are passing through. It's a life of this, case, and that's why the insistence of, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli on enhancing and fortifying and publicizing the Palestinian cause, carrying at a later stage the United Nations, is one of the admirable signs of success on the part of the ministerial visits, as you might have said at the very beginning, of Dr. Mustafa Madbouli in lieu of or on behalf of His Own Excellency Mr. President Abdel, sort of thing that we did really, would have to enhance every now and again, just by way of publicizing the Palestinian cause, of internationalizing the sort of the hidden dimensions of the atrocities and the acts of sabotage and demolition on the part of, the Jewish side, despite the fact that it was to be criminalized on the part of the International Criminal Court, and of the sort of the acts of rejection and of denial of being quite aware of the demolishing facts of the Jewish troop. But the fact remains until the very moment that they are still advancing, practicing that sort of, acts of demolishing the lives and of assassinating the innocent people actually living in Palestinian territorial land. So, it seems to be quite different diplomacy, and at the presidential level as much as ministerial, in the meantime, with playing such active roles in publicizing sort of signs of success that would have to be very much publicized here, there and everywhere.
Yes, Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.